So firstly, Phillipa then. Phillipa is an award-winning engineering manager and chartered engineer with the Institution of Engineering and Technology. In her spare time, she volunteers with various platforms, including STEMETS, Revive, Read Technology, and Inclusive Careers Volunteering, in order to mentor and coach others within the engineering and technology sector. Philly loves to help others achieve their goals and uses her experiences to help others build a network to improve their careers and confidence. So Mag has got 20 years experience now, both as a coder and a leader. She's a tutor for the Conversations Skills module of Leaders Who Coach from Better Conversations, which helps leaders bring a stronger coaching style to their leadership. And Mag also runs her own personal leadership and executive coaching business, Thinking Alley, and considers it a privilege to help others unlock their potential. So Mag believes coaching is a way to bring equity and listen deeply to an individual. So Mag, Philly, I'll hand over to you at this point and let you crack on.
Great. I have complete fear that I've misspelled the name of my company, which I thought was Thinking Ally, Barry.
Sorry. Yeah, my bad.
Excellent. I actually have had to Google that word over and over because it isn't one that phonetically necessarily sounds right. So we're off to a great start, I think, in that regard, that we can all make mistakes and learn from things, but that's funny. I appreciate it, Barry. So everyone, I really appreciate you all showing up today and caring about D&I. And Philly and I have talked about this a lot, and we really feel it's a collective effort. So we would like this to be a space where you feel you can express yourselves. We don't want to miss your viewpoints or experiences, and we're really glad that you're already sharing, and totally realize that vulnerability and sharing is hard, but it really does help to create change. So we welcome your thoughts, your questions, and any inputs that you're comfortable giving us at the end of the talk today. We would love if you feel comfortable putting your camera on, because it helps us build connections with the people who are here on the call. And I give you 100% permission as a messy eater to, if it's lunchtime, eat as messily as you like. So let's start, Philly. Philly's going to give a pre-cough to the, the talking. What does diversity and inclusion mean to you, Philly?
For me, it's all about being authentic and feeling completely safe to just be yourself.
Okay, and can you elaborate on the details of what that means?
Sure. I guess starting with diversity, that's all about representation of groups. So in the case of our talk, we're going to be thinking about underrepresented groups within engineering and technology. And so a typical or personal scenario for me would be starting a new role and not being the only Black woman in my department. Like, that's a start, but it's something that I've experienced before. And so I want to see different people with different personalities, different mindsets, people from different backgrounds, and all of that will make me feel a lot more comfortable. And linking back to what I said before, I'll feel more comfortable just being my authentic self. And then inclusion is all about your contributions. So how well is your presence valued? Are different views valued? And actually, are they put into perspective and put into place in the working environment? And so you haven't got the stress or anxiety you're thinking about, changing your personality to suit the workplace. You're not dimming your shine. You can just turn up and be yourself. You don't have to suppress your accent if English isn't your first language, because the workplace has made you feel supported and you feel accepted for who you are. So everyone's abilities and skill sets are respected. But what's also really important is that everyone's differences are celebrated as well. So yeah, those are a couple of examples of what diversity and inclusion means to me.
Great. And, to me, when you list those, they feel like basic requirements. And I wish they were things that we could all take for granted. But, as we've already touched on, not everybody can take this for granted. The ability to show up as yourself, to be comfortable, to do great work together with your team. And I totally realize as a white woman that I'm speaking from a position of privilege, and I really see it as my duty to listen, learn, observe, and empower the people on my team to help to strengthen the landscape of who's represented in a technical team. And I'm sure that many of you on the call have experienced an unpleasant working environment or had a situation or experience that was difficult.
Exactly. I can imagine there's loads of us that have been in this situation or know someone, like have a friend who have had a really unpleasant experience in the workplace, and they didn't feel safe flagging up the thing that actually made them feel uncomfortable. I know I've been in situations, and we might have been in the same, where you've been made to feel like you've just completely overreacted and you start to doubt yourself, you don't feel included. But in an inclusive workplace, you would feel supported by your team lead or your manager, for example. You would feel safe knowing that there's HR policies involved, or that there's inclusive support groups to actually support your concerns, and just, people that you can talk to make you feel included.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense when you talk about psychological safety. And I know that, overreacting and other sort of headlines can be used as a really strong form of gaslighting people when they have concerns, and it is used frequently against groups of people, and it's really hurtful. So when D&I is done well, you're saying that you feel supported by your lead, HR, your peers, you can show up authentically as you. So tell us more what D&I means to people when it is done well in a company.
When it's done well, it means you get to work with a diverse group of people. You look at your organization, and people from varied cultural backgrounds are represented across different teams, different departments, like the whole organization chart. So you can start to see yourself in different parts of the business, which means that you can see the possibilities of your career progression, which is, for me especially, that's super motivating. You can kind of see where your next steps are. And because of that, you're more likely to work harder, to go above and beyond, and you feel like your contributions are valued because of this. So like when I think of the best, like my favorite teams that I've worked in, I know that the greater the diversity or the inclusive, collaborative the team was, the easier I found it to be myself. And so in those engineering teams, I felt confident, I was speaking up in meetings, I could share my ideas or take on larger pieces of work because, I felt comfortable contributing to a bigger bit of impact on the project. I could make mistakes, I could ask questions, and I wouldn't feel like I'd be penalized for this as well. I've definitely been in situations as a graduate engineer where I've been told I asked too many questions. That's not the environment that you want to be in. That doesn't help you grow. And so I was having a lot more fun in these teams, and I started to learn a lot of new things. I just started to be so much better, and I was having fun at work. Who doesn't want to have fun at work? So yeah, those are some of the examples. But it just shows you how important diverse and inclusive tech teams are. It really made a difference to me. But what do you think a diverse tech team looks like? A diverse and inclusive tech team looks like?
Well, I mean, I really echo loads of your points there, and sort of nodding to Chris, where when people are celebrated in a diverse team for all of their individual characteristics, it does build a harmonious work environment of fun and productivity, because all of that fear that you might feel suppressing yourself is alleviated, and you just get to flow, which is what we're all kind of looking at. So I really echo what you said. And I think on top of the great work that you can do when you have a very highly functional, diverse team, the things you can achieve together are amazing, and they're inclusive, and they have a greater target audience, but also you really get to know each other deeply and form very strong bonds. And you get almost permission to share with and care for each other, which I think is not to be underestimated in our human experience. I know sometimes we're expected to show up to work with this robotic persona, and we kind of have a sort of a face that we put on at work. But I think the more that's reduced and the more people can be their goofy, question asking self, the better. So I definitely want my teammates to show up as themselves, and I want for team growth to occur by all of the individuals in it. So we're very much better together, and that we sort of hive mind intentionally. And Aristotle, I'm going to give him the quote of the day: the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So that's what I really think of. And when I think of diversity and I break it down into different human characteristics, like the first one I think of, which is common to all of us, is personality. And you think about how different people show up because of their personality, with different energy, with different focus, with different approaches to problem solving, and different ways that they need to converse with each other. So different requirements of how they might give and receive feedback, and what is motivating to them is often quite different. So it's really tailoring to the individual. And I feel that I ask our technical teams and the teammates to really adapt to each other in the way that we've adapted the whole of our lives to everyone in every situation. Just a bit of adapting to make everyone feel comfortable, and then we'll be on a good roll. And, you know, I can see from the lovely accents in the room that there are a few people here who are from other countries with different first languages. And I think, you know, when you think of people from different countries, there is so much tradition to embrace and differences in how we eat or we dance and how we, you know, converse. And I recognize also that there is disadvantage to that when you come to the UK, and English is the coding language. And I'm going to say as a polyglot, which is mainly because I've learned the word recently, and I'm delighted to be one, speaking a few different languages, and definitely kind of going, oh my God, I didn't know this existed, and it's not in English, and this is so hard. And I see people, you know, who come from different countries with different first languages, and they're coding in English. And Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire comes to mind. I think they're basically doing the dance backwards in high heels. So bravo to all of you. I think of, you know, gender, and this being an area that's really growing and needs a lot of support, sensitivity and understanding. And we need to break the stereotypes of what gender is defined as. We can immediately start as a to-do for all of us to start really respecting pronouns and using our language really intentionally. When I think of ethnic background or cultural background, I really want to create workspaces that allow people to lean in and to connect to each other deeply and learn to bring equity where we see a divide. So there's other considerations, physical ability, both the invisible and the visible. And, you know, as someone who's been on a long COVID journey for the last 9 months, certainly the invisible is something that I have a lot more experience of, and it's brought me a greater empathy to anybody who's struggling physically with being different to what the world offers them in terms of the norm. So we really have to kind of consider allowing those people to be capable by not putting barriers in their way, and we can act sensitively and intentionally, but often sort of invisibly and thoughtfully. You know, something as simple as where we go to lunch. Is it catering for everybody's needs? I mean, it's something we do quite regularly when we're in the normal world. Neurodiversity, adapting to each other's strengths and needs, harness really what people have to offer in their strengths and being considerate to them and thoughtfully inclusive. And a lot of these have huge overlap to each other. So it is something that, you know, has a theme that you can see repeated over and over again. Sexual orientation, that we use inclusive language, that we send out invites that aren't heteronormative, that we celebrate, normalize and support each other's sexual orientation. And with regard to religious beliefs, that we respect and we create an environment where people can express themselves without the fear of discrimination. And again, that we embrace each other. So I would summarize it as, regardless of anybody's human characteristics, that we respect, care for each other and show positive regard, that we collaborate positively, inclusively, happily, and productively, therefore, that we have each other's back. So when we see somebody is not doing well in the environment, that we change the environment to empower them, that we feel that it's our responsibility to let others feel safe and valued and seen, that we're all in it together to create that psychological safety. And then through all of that, the ideas, the conversations, the innovation, it flows, and we have an experience of broadening ourselves and our team, and possibly externally our families, in empathy and character. And we gain a deeper understanding of each other, and we celebrate each other. And we sort of create this new culture in technology that echoes wider. That's my hope. That's not necessarily the case right now. So tell me, Philly, regarding technology specifically, why is D&I important?
When we're engineering new products, we want to have as many viewpoints as possible so we can provide people with the right products. I think there's no point creating a really good product if you've discounted a global majority. So if your tech teams lack diversity, if your teams aren't inclusive, you end up with an echo chamber style tech team where everyone just thinks the same. So where is the innovation? Where is the creativity? You don't have it. So we really need to focus on underrepresented groups for products, for example, like facial recognition. There's an amazing documentary that was released recently called Coded Bias, and this explores racial bias in facial recognition algorithms. And this is a clear example of a product that is used on everyone, including the individuals in these underrepresented groups. However, many companies and teams developing these products have little to no diversity within their teams. And so most of the time, you've got the wrong people in the room making big decisions that can seriously impact the lives of these groups. So it's really important, because when we don't have diverse teams, our knowledge and ideas are limited, which means we don't cater to people's needs, and then we just make a lot of mistakes. So for me, it's really important to have diverse and inclusive tech teams, because it means we can get the right people in the room making these really big life-changing decisions.
And I think, you know, that expression, the right people in the room, is something as a to-do that we can all take away, where we can look at any meeting or team structure or leadership structure or HR structure, and we can find out, are the right people in the room? We can think thoughtfully about representation. You mentioned embarrassing mistakes, and I think that is one that's really worth highlighting, due to the fact that these mistakes cause a brand to have a reduction in following and in the honor that they, you know, can project in the environment they're working in. You know, there are lots of examples of this, unfortunately. So we have health products that are going live without consideration of women, which is a 50% plus part of the community. You know, fertility, I don't know if you noticed, is a huge factor in the continuation of the human race. And I really feel, when you think of the right people in the room, had enough women been on that team, then we would have avoided that problem. And as you mentioned, Coded Bias, which is an amazing documentary, it deals with facial recognition and the flaws within AI when you don't create checks and your data is completely biased, and non-white faces are not recognized as human faces. You've got biased hiring systems where they might be gender biased, valuing male candidates and male language over female, and also name bias within that. You've got home smart speakers who are really presented in a female servile persona, thus propagating a gender bias. And even, you know, every day I wonder how many forms we fill out. And if we don't have thoughtful data collection, we can really alienate people when we are collecting things such as gender, ethnicity, title, and pronouns. We can really alienate people and make them feel abandoned and unheard and left out. AI can really create bias, and we have the opportunity as technologists to really stop that. And I feel it is our duty to stop the propagation of bias in the world from ruining technology. And we need to promote equity in coding and in data. It is totally within our grasp. And I hadn't really realized as a technologist, as someone who's sort of been watching lots of Grey's Anatomy in the evenings of lockdown, which seems to be never ending, you know, that is a job where lives are at stake all the time. And I always thought when I went into work as a technologist, oh, I'm just coding some stuff. But I've recently really realized the power that we have within our grasp and our duty and responsibility. So kind of to make sure, you know, for Chris, who was talking about what we can do now and others at the start of the call. So what can we do now, Philly? And if maybe we start on individuals first.
As people that are actually working in the industry, we can share our knowledge and our experiences, because that's really useful. So we can talk to people about our journey so far, talk to people about how we got into this field, give really honest experiences about what it's like to work in this field, the challenges we faced, and then anything else that's actually useful for people to hear. Anything is valuable for people to learn from, because I think when we share our experiences, people can really just discover new opportunities. People will learn something that they weren't aware of before. I really believe in having good role models. So, you know, leaders, coaches, mentors, having those groups around you or available to you is extremely life-changing. And so as individuals, we should share our own knowledge and we should create opportunities for others as well. That's like a very good starting point.
Yeah, and I think going back to your example as the graduate asking lots of questions, I think ask questions, share experiences, challenge things. So that's a really good point on individuals. And then what can companies do right now to promote an inclusive culture?
Gosh, there's so much that companies could be doing. Like really valuing the feedback from employees. So getting feedback, arranging workshops and facilitating discussions, asking employees for suggestions on how to improve diversity and inclusion. The onboarding process is really important as well. So clearly communicating why the company actually cares about diversity and inclusion, asking for feedback and then encouraging people to ask questions. And then looking at the company brand is really important as well. Like when people search for your company, what does it say about your culture? Do you celebrate holidays and events for underrepresented groups? Do you have inclusive benefits like flexible hours, core working hours? Do you host or sponsor events relating to diversity and inclusion? If not, why not? Get employees involved, work with other companies on the same topics, have external roundtable discussions to discuss these initiatives so you can learn from others in the industry that are trying to tackle the same thing. And then look at the leadership teams, especially the engineering leadership team, and really figure out whose voices are not represented within these areas and why, because that is a big part of your organization, the leadership team. Those are a few things.
Okay, great. We talked earlier about hiring as well as the way people get into a company. And we also talked about the hiring team as those people who support when things go wrong. So can you tell us thoughts regarding hiring and D&I?
Hiring it's the way people get into a company. It's the front door, so to speak. So finding out, it's really important to find out if that process is in any way biased. That's a really crucial starting point. So it's good to look at the various recruitment processes and the stages involved. So having a look to see if you advertise on sites that target diverse and inclusive candidates, because this will help, of course, widen the pool of talent that applies to your roles. Looking at your careers page, what content do you have, what images, etc. This is all really important because to candidates applying to your company, a non-diverse careers page can be seen as a sign that the company is not inclusive or diverse. So you're not going to get those applicants applying for those roles. Also really important to take time to create job descriptions. So removing biased language, tweaking the layout from the traditional checklist. It's not a shopping list. We need to remember that. It needs to be very welcoming. It should look at different formats like must-haves and nice-to-haves. And by using certain phrases or certain layouts, we reduce the diversity within the candidates applying. Even if it's unintentional, it still happens. So we've got to do our research on that as well. And then looking at the D&I statement, so having the statement within the job description or having a statement to say that you encourage applications from underrepresented groups. And also make sure that you diversify the interview panels where possible, because this is how you represent the company. So you need to make sure that you're conveying the right message. Otherwise, once again, it's going to look like the business is not diverse and inclusive. So that's a really important thing as well. The hiring aspect is really important. It's something I really care about. So I love to get involved as much as I can in the places that I work, because the important factors here are that we really need to be patient. I know that we want to get a lot of applicants through the door and we might be in a rush, but we have to put the right things in place. And seeing results will take a long time, but it's really necessary. So my advice for companies would be to do a lot of research, ask for input from your employees, and be open to criticism as well. That's a really important thing. It's an honest process, so trust the process as well.
Okay, lots of really important points for companies to take on board right now. And I believe it was you, Cesar, who talked about, was it the upstream changes that, you know, we have to make in society and, you know, education, but these are changes we can make right now in companies. So just to sort of echo that, so welcoming messages on job applications, shopping lists rather than checklists, you know, really kind of bringing diversity into interview panels and HR teams, being open to challenge and responding to that well. On top of that, I would probably add in general about diversity and inclusion that we really listen to understand, that we put the person we are speaking with at the center of the conversation, and that we remain curious and we show unconditional positive regard to each other in a non-judgmental tone, that we recognize our own bias. We all have bias, it's part of being human, but that we can cognitively get through that bias and change it. We will make mistakes, but you know, like you've said, Philly, that we become really people who are accountable for those mistakes, and that we learn and we grow and we promote others because of the mistakes that we make along the way. You can never know something until you know it, and at that point you can never unknow it, so it changes you forever. We challenge stereotypes, that we, you know, happily grow together and we become friends. We recognize that we spend 8 hours a day, 5 days a week with people at work, and that's a huge chunk of our life, and it can be a really meaningful place. That we have fun and that we allow ourselves and others to show up authentically, as Philly said, and that we do great tech. And I have a real hope that as technologists who are constantly changing and adapting to new tech and scrambling to try and keep up and fit into this new change in technology, learning new languages, new ways of thinking and doing things, that we have an incredible ability to adapt, and that we can learn to put this into our focus of diversity and inclusion, that we change, we learn, we grow, we cater for others in the world of technology. So that is basically everything that I think we wanted to talk about, Philly.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would love to hear from all of the lovely people on the call today. There is no structure to this. Questions, opinions, challenges. We're really open to learning together.
Thank you very much for that, to both of you. Do we have anyone that would like to go first? So I think as well, if you either put your virtual hand up, then I can unmute you from here. That's probably the easiest way if everyone knows how to do that, or put a real hand up and I can see from here. But does anyone have, Chris? Yeah, Chris, you've got a question there. Go. Let me unmute you. Can you unmute, Chris?
Thank you very much. Sorry, apparently you were not allowing, or the host was not allowing me to unmute myself there.
We'll change that. We'll change that now.
So yeah, just coming back to what I said at the start, you know, I think my question really is, how do you measure how well an organization is doing right now? You know, basically, do we have an inclusive environment or not? How do we measure that? And how, you know, hopefully, if we make some progress, how do we measure that progress and see if we're going in the right direction? Because, you know, it's very easy for me to stand here and say, oh yes, well, we're doing very well at work because I think we are, but you know, that might not be the case, and that might not be everyone's experience.
Philly, do you want to start us off?
Which you can say, John. Okay, that's a really good question. I don't know where to start. I think one of the really good things would be engaging with employees and doing health checks. And so that way, for the inclusion side of things, you can find out how people are really finding the workplace, whether it's within engineering teams, such as the Spotify health check model, or wider organization surveys like Peakon surveys. Those two are quite good examples of ways to see how people are feeling about the actual culture of the organization. You can put ratings, you can modify the questions, and you can also add comments, and it gives you lots of statistics. So you could also put that in your company performance to see how well the scores are trending and get feedback that way. In terms of diversity, that's a bit more difficult, not just looking at the organization, but of course getting stats about your organization. So listing the underrepresented groups and then looking at all the teams within the org and seeing, okay, what are the percentages that make up different levels of the organization? Obviously, if it's not a good split, then you want to find out why. So you could talk to people individually, or like I mentioned before, look at the hiring process, or just look at different things that involve people, bring people to your company, and also look at retention rates as well. Are people leaving because of the culture or the lack of diversity and inclusion? So that was a lot of stuff, but just those are a couple of things that came to the front of my mind, actually. I hope that was
Thank you very much.
useful.
I've got some notes. I'm going to look up the Spotify. What was the Spotify thing called? Just so I make
It's
sure I say
a
the right thing.
Spotify health check. So it's something that lots of companies have their own version of, but they use it in retros. And it's just asking questions about how engineers are feeling in different topics. I found it very useful when using it with other teams I've worked with.
Cool. Thank you very much. I'll look that up.
And I would add on top of that, without it being on the company level, that as individuals, we have capabilities to recognize when someone's feeling excluded or unhappy, their voice isn't being heard. Like, take personal ownership and be an ally to the people who are not the majority. And you mentioned yourself, Chris, as a white male at the start of the call. I think you really have great power in being allies to people who are in a majority as well as a minority. We can all be allies to each other. So take the personal responsibility of recognizing as a human being if someone is being treated differently or is appearing unhappy, that they're not in their flow, they're not contributing. Recognize it, take personal initiative to connect with someone and have a conversation and see how you can help, and let it trickle from the bottom up as well as the top down. Excuse me.
Cool. Cheers.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Philli Mag. Cesar, I know you had a couple of questions there yourself.
Yeah, I'll just do one now and maybe another one later if other people have. So it's a question I have. I'll try to explain it. It's like, I feel sometimes that nowadays diversity and inclusion are getting more mainstream in a very shallow way. So whether you're taking things Black Lives Matter or International Women's Day, you have all these companies posting this tweet, or Happy International Women's Day or Black Lives Matter, when in reality, it's just like a marketing, it's just a tweet and they're not really doing anything. And sometimes I'm getting worried that it gives some people the impression that things are getting better when maybe they are not necessarily. And I'm wondering if you share that fear, and if there are ways of keeping these companies into account. They're making these claims, oh yeah, we care about women, we make a tweet on International Women's Day, but at the end of the day, we're not really going to change anything. And yeah, so I don't know if I managed to explain what I meant.
No, you did. That was a really good question. Oh, Mag, I saw you unmuted first, so you can definitely, okay. I hadn't even thought of an answer. I do definitely understand where you're coming from, and I do empathize with that a lot. I think when looking at companies, it's really good to just ask those questions as well. So if you're working with an organization that might just throw out some tweets on a special day, for example, like International Women's Day, or to support one initiative, have a conversation with the people working on that and saying, what else are we doing? Kind of pushing the narrative there and saying, what else can we do? Do we actually have inclusive groups within the company? Once this day finishes, what else are we going to do? How are we going to measure progress and things like that? If you're not actually working in an organization, but you're looking at these things, then of course it'll be good to look at anything that the business has shared. So looking at their blogs and seeing when, look back in their archives, have they posted this regularly? Do they have anything that they want to share? Or is it literally one post in 2021 and then when you look back, it never happened again? And definitely that will be quite useful, because it will not necessarily give you an insight to the company, because people can start anywhere and progress, but also reaching out and just asking, what else are you going to do? I know if people put things on Twitter or Instagram, you can call them out politely and say, okay, what other initiatives are you working on? Is there any other useful information that you could share to help me understand where the company is coming from, or how the company is improving diversity and inclusion? Just because they haven't done it a lot doesn't necessarily mean that they don't care, but everyone's got to start somewhere. So just because there might be one post doesn't mean that it's going to be the last. So I would say ask the right questions, and don't be afraid to ask those questions either.
And I would add that even those tweets or posts on social media representing a celebration of a day that wasn't previously represented, or supporting a group that weren't previously supported, it is a step along the journey. So, that is a change in itself, and that promotes sort of a snowball effect slowly. And I would say, in a way, before, casting a negative at a company, look at yourself and see what you're doing. I also think it's really worth having positive reinforcement. So those companies that do excellent work, calling it out and being a voice for support. obviously the people working at the company are the people who really know how diversity and inclusion is supported within and how they feel within a company. So I would recommend that, you know, if you're an employee of a company that's sort of acting externally in one way and differently internally, to challenge them and to bring more accountability. It's something we can all do on the accountability front.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I guess so. Just maybe a follow-up for me. I don't know if I'm getting paranoid, but sometimes I'm worried it's more like the global perception. So I don't know if we want to go into this rabbit hole, but you know, a certain famous family recently said that they would appoint a head of inclusion, and I'm worried that they're gonna have this person coming and they're gonna say in 3 months, that's it, we've fixed that problem. Now we don't have to talk about it. Where, you know, we're never gonna fix centuries of issues. You know, it's going to be an ongoing process, and I'm just worried that the wider population, the people that are not necessarily knowledgeable about the topic, will have like a wrong perception. It's maybe like more like a PR issue, that you think you can fix you know, sexism, or you can fix racism because, yeah, so I don't know, but yeah, very thankful for you.
I think you know, definitely it's the start is putting someone in a position to be that person that's accountable for starting the conversations towards diversity and inclusion. I think the difference between, you know, having it on the external world and actually the reality, it comes down for me to psychological safety. So it really is a start towards the psychological safety. It's not enough to check a checkbox. What really comes down to the success in D&I is the fact that people feel psychologically safe enough that they're able to be their authentic selves, express their feelings, their challenges in a safe space. So it's a start to working towards something. And I'm definitely in agreement with you there that you can't fix so many centuries of hurt in one go, but it is an iterative process and a very much a collaborative process. And sometimes we can feel quite powerless, I think, in it, but I would like to kind of bolster your energies and say that you know, as an individual technologist on an individual team, you can make a difference and you can promote that psychological safety again from the bottom up. I often feel that as individuals, we don't realize our power, but we have huge power towards each other.
Yeah. I was going to mention as well, you talked about recruitment. Another front door is vendors. So I do a lot of work in vendor selection, talking to suppliers and potential suppliers about IT things they're going to do for the railway. And I always have a conversation with them about those other things, about what's their views on diversity, inclusion, that kind of stuff as well, because we can use that as part of our selection criteria. Perhaps that's not being done everywhere, but I'm really keen on talking to our procurement people to make sure that's literally a tick box in our list of things that we ask our suppliers. Also related, I don't know if people are aware of Invisible Women. I guess most people on this call probably will because of who they are, but that's a really good read in terms of open your eyes. And I do a lot around design thinking about building systems that work for the intended users. And if you put yourself in the mind of the intended users, you know, you made the point earlier, but you know, it really is a powerful way of delivering a system which actually works for the end user. And Invisible Women will just open my eyes incredibly to the kind of odd things, shall we say, that go on. I mean, one particular example in my field is public transport. You know, women are huge consumers of public transport and have virtually no representation in terms of policy decisions around transport. That's just simply illogical, if nothing else, you know.
And I think to build on the point that Philli made, I mean, that is an excellent start, Stephen, that you're going and, you know, educating yourself and having more empathy towards putting yourself in someone else's shoes. But back to Philli's point, having the right person in the room. So also having females represented on your teams and in your vendors. And I think what you said there was really powerful about, you know, putting the onus on other people and, you know, expecting that they're going to be a diverse and inclusive vendor. And certainly as a leader in hiring, I would push hiring companies to be, you know, showing me how they were diverse and inclusive. And I know, Philli, you probably have great points to make on this, so I'll shush.
No, I think it's a really good point, but especially who you're working with needs to represent the values you care about as well. So whether it is a vendor that cares about diversity inclusion, or if you, like I mentioned, the external companies that you can put job specs on, you want to understand what are they actually doing. It doesn't just start at just uploading the job spec. You want to find out what else are they doing so that you understand that your values are aligned. Otherwise, you're just working with another person that's not going to be helping you with the initiative that you care about. So I definitely agree with the things you said so far. It's really important.
And Stephen, I will say, to echo your point, that is a really excellent book, and it has some amazing scenarios on how, you know, you can actively do thinking from someone else's perspective. So thank you for being an ally.
I'll come in as well. I quite liked that idea about speaking to vendors, Stephen, as well. And Mag, as you said there, puts the onus on other people. I remember when we were trying to organize an agile panel many years ago now, and people weren't talking about diversity. It just wasn't the topic that it is today. And so now it's at the heart of everything that we do in terms of organization of talks and communities and that kind of thing. But it wasn't. And I remember we tried to organize a panel, an agile panel, and Dan North, obviously very famous tech speaker, said, happy to be involved, would love to, but my condition is that there's at least one woman on the panel. And it was so strange. It was the first time anybody had ever said anything like that or made a point. But it really put the onus back on us to fix the problem, or say fix the problem, to try and do something about it, to try and play a part, to try and take responsibility in doing more to get this panel sorted. So I just quite liked the way you said that, Stephen, around asking the vendors, and you know, hopefully it just causes that ripple impact, doesn't it? It gets everyone talking about it and everyone taking responsibility for the problem.
It also highlights the point mentioned earlier. We have a lot more power than we think. You know, if we're invited onto a committee, say that I want to see somebody, you know, a more diverse representation. If I come along, that's power there that we've got, we can use.
Yeah, absolutely. I wondered, Mag and Philly, everyone always likes quick wins, and is there anything big that you can do and that kind of thing? Is there anything that you've seen, any case studies of this done well, of companies, anything that you guys have come across in your adventures in this space that you were like, you know, you could kind of see and be like, yes, this was brilliant. Anything at all that you feel is worth mentioning in that regard?
Well, Philly's already mentioned the Spotify example, and I'd like you to talk more about this, Philly.
The pressure. Okay. I guess I found that really useful because it just really encourages teams to work together. And of course, mentioning agile and things like that, it builds the culture of listening to each other, valuing like different ideas, different viewpoints, and working on action points. It's not just saying, okay, what went well, what didn't go so well, what don't you like, but how are we actually going to work on this? How are we going to improve this, and how soon can we do it? And so I would say that's been a really useful thing for me to use. In the different teams I've worked on, different types of health checks have been really useful for that. I wouldn't say it's necessarily one of the tools just to kind of fix D&I, but it's a really good start when it comes to your individual teams, because if you've got teams talking a bit more about different topics, then it builds their confidence to talk about other things, or to speak up in one-to-ones, for example, with their managers, because they know that, you know, you mentioned psychological safety, they've got a safe environment to do so. So I think that's a really good example of how we can improve things. And I think that's a good case study that we should all look at and try to use in our teams at the moment.
And it's Benga, yes, she's back. I was wondering, you know, you mentioned at the start the challenges that you face, and Benga, I'd love to know what's worked well for you, or from anyone else in the audience, because I certainly see this as a space to learn from others.
One of the questions I was going to ask as well was, in the hiring process, do you think companies should stop looking at things like stop asking questions like your name, your sex? Because I've applied for a few jobs now to big companies where I apply for the job and then they send me an email straight away saying, oh, sorry, but we don't sponsor international candidates. And I'm like, in your questions, you've clearly asked if I'm a British citizen. I've said yes, but you're sending me this email. It's a bit like, okay, I mean, it's annoying, but you just have to move on and deal with it. So I've come across things of that. And then I graduated from a boot camp last year. There was about 25 of us. I was the only person of color, black person, whatever you call it. Everyone else has a job and we sort of have the same ability. And I've spent a lot of time even changing up my portfolios, adding more technology. And then people who come after who came after me are applying for jobs that I'm applying for as well. And there's just no progress. I am working as a teaching assistant for a Canadian company. I had to be employed by a company in Canada, but here it's been a struggle. So yes, it's just, there's so many questions I ask myself, which I'm a bit like, whoa, what's going on here? Is it because of, is it my ability? Is it because of the color of my skin? Is it because of the name? I don't know. I'm quite confused, so yeah.
That's an awful experience to be having. It must feel extremely demoralizing and hurtful. Yeah, and this is what happens when we don't have strong diversity and inclusion and equity in companies. I think perhaps we could, as a collective group on this call, you know, support Benga and figure out how to overcome this oversight. So all together, you know, I'd love to be sort of a focused, positive change for your experience. And, you know, Philly, if you want to jump in.
Definitely. That's an awful situation to be in. And I know many people that have been in a similar situation too. And there can be so many different factors, but this also includes the technology or tools being used to look at your CV being biased already. And that is a very big problem. Like when we use tools to look at CVs, actually it can cause a lot of problems for us. I've seen tools where you can put CVs through to remove the biased language, so to speak, but actually it removed all of the technical jargon. And I was like, this is just an empty job description. All the tools, all the tech, all the really important things were removed because they were seen as too masculine. And I thought, this software is biased already. Like, I want everyone to apply for this job. And so that's a really big problem that we need to work on. And then systems looking at your names, for example, those can definitely be biased, because if you've got non-diverse teams writing the code for that, then they're not going to think about, I was going to say edge cases, but actually that's not true. Non-English names are not edge cases. And so having the diverse teams writing that code for these bits of software is exactly what we need. And that is the problem that lots of candidates are facing at the moment. How to solve the problem is a very different story, probably part 2 and 3 of the talk. But I agree with Mag. I think this is a great platform to chat about that and see how we can help as much as we can. Definitely reach out. I would do everything in my power to try and help, because it's something that I really care about. So yeah, do speak to us afterwards if you'd like to.
Thank you.
I tell you what, listening to that is making me think. We do a bunch of clinics and all sorts of different things. We do everything that we do is just for free and part of the community thing. Given that story, I'm sure you wouldn't be the only one there. Like, working in recruitment, you kind of get to learn the hacks of how to get a job. I'd be more than happy to do something there as well, like CV advice and yeah, anything like that, and talking through interview questions and stuff like that, like as part of a some kind of effort in this space. Like I don't know, Mag, I'm sure yourself and Philly, maybe we could do something that kind of, yeah, assuming that this is an issue that you know, affects a number of different people, then I think we could probably come up with a solution that could help people in that situation. So yeah, something we can talk about anyway afterwards. I just never heard anyone actually say it quite like that.
And so I feel that the onus of blame lies on companies. There's nothing that Benga is doing that is, you know, unacceptable. There's no blame lying at his door. It's very much our society and our companies and our ways of thinking that are at fault here. And, you know, I don't know how people feel in challenging a corporation, you know, when you've had that kind of response where you've applied for a job as a British national and somehow you've received this email because of your name. You know, being an ally in that scenario of where that happens and supporting that, and social media, you know, as much as it can seem trivial, has the power to do that, to support each other and say, I agree with you, this isn't okay. What can we do to change this process in your company who have exhibited this? Like, we can really be allies to each other. So thank you, Benga, for sharing. I realize that is a disheartening experience, and it really will, I think, help good conversations to occur on this topic of real experiences that people have to go through.
Can I give an example of where we might be able to help there? Because this is really from my space, and I can see it from the other side. I think we've all got responsibility here. I see job adverts from our place that says must have rail experience, which on the surface of it looks really innocent. When you think 80% of the people who currently work in the railway are men, and probably a good proportion of those are white as well. So unconsciously, we've immediately set the playing field up to be biased. So it's the role of people like me that are aware of those things to have conversations with their HR people to say, look, I know you don't intend to do this, but this is the effect that you're having on potentially talented applicants that are being turned away from the front door before they've even had a conversation. So again, it comes back to collective responsibility and things that we can do within our power, within the organisations we currently work for, to try and stop situations like that from happening again, that everybody agrees is wrong, but we're effectively allowing to happen.
%100%. Okay, just got a question here from James on the chat. Do you know of any independent processes, awards that recognise a company's efforts towards EDI? In academia, we have the Athena Swan to tackle gender diversity, which all universities have to go through and advertise on their websites.
Philly, have you got thoughts on this? I don't actually know of specific awards.
I feel like I've seen this, and this is actually a good point. I might need to go look at this, but I think there are some articles where there's like, you know, top 20 workplaces to work for example, that have initiatives for diversity and inclusion. And there's lots of different sites about, you know, top 10 companies in tech for women, etc. I don't know if those come with awards, but either way, those are a really good starting point actually. So I would say there are quite a few out there. I just don't know the names, but that's on me actually. I should really know the names of those articles so that we can work towards my company getting our names on there if they're not there already actually, because that's a really good example of showing the initiatives that you've done and the work you've done and being recognized. So the accountability there, not just saying, oh yeah, we've done a post for Black History Month for International Women's Day. No, we've been recognized by an external body that says that we're doing this properly. I've learned something today. Thank you for that question.
No, yeah, great question, James. And going back to Cesar, I suppose that is, and please tell me if I'm mispronouncing your name. I haven't actually asked you how to pronounce this.
I don't mind, this is very good.
How do you pronounce it?
I find it quite hard to insert like a French inside an English language. So I would say César, but César. If I say it middle, it sounds weird. So I'm happy with César. Right? I'm not really
César, I'm very happy to be more French in this moment. That's great. But there's an example, I think, you know, as well from James, you know, as well as having, you know, that social media saying, hey, we do this, to have it to be accounted for properly and investigated and maybe have employees feed towards it, you get a very unbiased thing. So that's actually a really good point for me and you, Philly, to ponder on and add to future versions of this talk, how you can, you know, the combination of those two ideas, we can improve and actually factually say, and it'll help you as well, Chris, at Masabi, how a company can be rated for their diversity and inclusion. Really good points. James, I feel like you might have had something else to say.
Thank you for your comments on it. I know it's a big deal in academia. You get bronze, silver or gold, except nobody ever gets gold because we haven't fixed the problem, right? And they have to do a lot of work and submit evidence that shows what they're doing to tackle gender diversity, and I think it is mostly focused on gender. But you know, I was thinking, when you go into companies and you see those little plaques on the front doors saying, you know, we're a great company, doesn't doesn't have anything to say about diversity and inclusivity. So I don't know what there is that could be done around that.
I have an idea. Look on the LinkedIn profiles of the leaders of companies and see what they're talking about. Are they talking about these kind of things day in, day out, or are they just talking about them on International Women's Day or whatever, special occasion is there? Because no one's forced to write anything on a LinkedIn profile. What you put in your LinkedIn profile is really about what you think personally, I feel. So perhaps that's a good way of finding out what's really going on.
And as you mentioned, LinkedIn profiles, a to-do that we can all do right now, I think, is put our pronouns on there to support other people's pronouns. I have a black heart on there to recognize all of the racial inequality that has occurred and been highlighted very much in the last year, even though I know it's centuries old. I'm thinking I could do a supportive icon for other human characteristics, such as sexual orientation. Another one that's quite useful, it's only available on the mobile part of LinkedIn, is you can actually record your own name. And having worked with people from many different countries, I think it's really important to honor pronouncing your name as it's intended to be pronounced, even with a French flair, which I can do. But I think names are really important, and I think culturally, a lot people from other countries coming to the UK have to adapt their names for different reasons, and I actually don't think this is okay. And I think it's a very focused thing we can do to support each other's individuality. Would anyone who hasn't spoken like to add anything or ask a question? Very peaceful.
Good. I think we're good. Mag, Philly, is there a way that people can follow up with you afterwards if they so wish? LinkedIn, Twitter, anything that you prefer?
LinkedIn seems to be the easiest thing, yeah.
Yeah, definitely LinkedIn. I just noticed, Abigail, you came on video. Did I stop you from asking a question or making a... No, okay, just wanted to check. Yeah, LinkedIn for sure, Barry. That would be a great way to connect with me and Philly.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you very much. I really, really appreciate you guys coming along to have these conversations. Let's hope it's a regular thing that we can do. We're more than happy to keep providing this space as and when you go on with this journey. Please keep coming back and making sure it's live and ongoing. I loved what you said there. I wrote it down. You wanted to create this new culture in technology that echoes wider. And I think so many things, tech just changes so much of the world, and all these things seem to happen in tech and then just go out. So yeah, I think that's a real nice way to think about it. So yeah, thank you very much for coming on board, and we will see everyone next time.
Thank you, Barry, for hosting.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, speakers as well.
Thank you so much, everyone. Great audience participation. Good work.